Okay, great.
All right, you're all set.
Thank you for attending our session on sustainability learning for action and engagement. This is an OER for an interactive website, and it's a 2024-2025 IITG OER Impact Grant. Some of the topics we're going to touch upon today are open scholarship education, equity, the United Nations Global Goals, and other sustainability frameworks and competencies. We are from SUNY New Paltz, and I am Joshua Korenblat, Associate Professor of Graphic Design. I'm co-presenting today with Sarah Wyman, Associate Professor of English, and Christoph Lalicki, who cannot be here today. So I'm going to kind of demo some of his designs on his behalf, and he's part of our project team. He's also an instructor at SUNY New Paltz. So the next slide is an introduction to the print book, which is the companion to this Learning Hub idea that we're developing. And Sarah Wyman will present this slide.
Hi, nice to see you all. Thank you so much for being here and for this invitation. Our book, Sustainability Learning for Action and Engagement, will be published this year by Palgrave Macmillan Springer Nature, and we'll have an open access CC by NC or non-commercial license. We're very interested in Jenny Rose Halprin's keynote observations about framing users as pirates and what it means to puzzle through our possible levels of mainly illusory protection. We acknowledge that digital open access books consume electricity and have fossil fuel impacts. It was important to our collaborating author team that this volume be accessible price-wise for those with internet access, nevertheless. As Jenny Halpern also explained, the differential pricing of $128 hardcover in our case causes harm to the public. Next. So our project originates with our sustainability faculty learning community, which was created and managed by our sustainability coordinator, Lisa Mitten, who's actually housed in our facilities department. Our goal is to provide teaching templates and share sustainability action projects with the broader education and workforce development communities. 39 of our 50 contributing authors have direct ties to SUNY New Paltz. However, we have also included global voices from around the planet, as Josh will explain later. Some of the key programs on our campus that have generated all this energy are the Sustainability Living and Learning Community for Students, the Sustainability Faculty Fellows Program, in which over 80 fellows have been trained in the last 8 years, and our Student Sustainability Ambassadors. We're excited about the New York State Climate Change Education Bill, integrating sustainability into K-20 education. And we had a summer research student, Juliana Brown, who worked on how to convert our ideas from the book for K-6 education. Next.
Okay, so an overview, broadly speaking, open education supports sustainability because equity is the foundation of the United Nations global goals. In particular, we're focused on United Nations global goal number 4, which is quality education for all. So I have a link here to a little kind of visualization of the global goals, also called the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, and you can see here that the foundation of them right here, 1 through 10, are all about people and relationships with each other. And that's really all about equity. That becomes kind of the platform for ecological and spiritual sustainability in this model. Um, so how are we going to do that? Well, as Sarah mentioned, the book will be made available through SpringerLink for much broader access than a print book would have. There are 285 million annual views on the SpringerLink platform. It's going to be available in multiple formats, including HTML, ebook, EPUB, and I should have mentioned, of course, PDF. The cost of converting the book to open access is a hefty sum of $15,000, 800. That's a lot of money. And we are deeply grateful for the SUNY IITG grant and Primary Source, a Massachusetts-based nonprofit that funded this project. Springer Nature says that the downloads of their open access books are on average 10 times higher than those of non-open access books. And citations of open access books are 2.4 times higher. So a lot of metrics that they've gathered showing the impact of making your work open access. But of course, there's a big barrier there when you look at the cost of that. Sustainability competencies is also something we want to stress in this project. Sustainability is not just about downloading information or transmitting knowledge. It's really about developing through experiential learning, a set of practices to hone the knowledge, skills, and values that are requisite for becoming global citizens and change agents. The image I have here is from an influential journal article, The Sustainability Competencies by Katja Brundiers and Arnim Weik. What it shows is that there are some core sustainability competencies such as system thinking, futures thinking, values thinking, and strategies thinking that are related to planning, and they're all kind of interrelated to each other. Those then need to be implemented and then integrated with professional competencies that include interpersonal competencies, which is all about collaboration, and intrapersonal competencies, so within one's own self, and then professional competencies, including compassionate communication and responsive project management, and more overarching general competencies such as critical thinking, creativity, and learning. Taken together, you can see this is a broad spectrum of disciplinary competencies, from very specific content within a discipline to content independent, and then from really specific skills to more general skills. This is a holistic model, and together is a transformative education model. Our global contributors that Sarah mentioned earlier were due to a publisher's request for more international voices. And so we do have letters from authors abroad in South Africa, Spain, Saudi Arabia, and Switzerland, and also indigenous voices. This sparked our thinking about asking the question, what does sustainability look like on your campus? And thinking about how these projects might change depending on local factors. And that really influenced our thinking of the Learning Hub. The Learning Hub concept that we're going to demo in a moment here is based on this goal of transforming our book from an archive of innovative curricular projects into actionable new projects, so that it can become a place to remix and share sustainability projects. We had three exemplars we wanted to share. In particular, All We Can Save, which is a popular book and also a companion website, like our book, an anthology. And on the website, you can go to a link called Circles, and it'll take you to these kind of conversation spaces and session guides that kind of make the book a little bit more interactive. So that's one example. I also want to note the All We Can Save book and website are beautifully designed. And we want to inspire to something that's not just functional, but also aesthetic and beautiful, because beautiful things actually do work better because the users of those things are less stressed out by the interface, and so they can use them more easily. Another good example is climate designers. And similar to All We Can Save, it has this concept of chapters. So we can kind of get this idea right away of going from the global to a more local community through a website. And then Climate Solutions, which is an initiative by Jeff Seidman, a philosophy professor at Vassar College, that has a lot of great resources for introducing climate change topics into a class in an accessible way, and also careers, and kind of going from theory to practice right on a website for educators. For me, I also, about 10 years ago, worked on a project with Stanford University's Office of International Programs called Go Global, which consolidated international learning at Stanford all into one hub with a map-based view. And I think that analogy was something that kind of stuck with me when I thought about how would we bring the book into this idea of a remix, a space for sharing and remixing. Our Learning Hub team includes us and also Paul Hirsch at SUNY ESF, who's an expert in online education and environmental leadership. Nicole Simon of Nassau Community College, who has expertise in COIL and teaching sustainability. Samrat Pathania of Walk Hill High School. He's also a board member of the Mid-Hudson Teacher Center at SUNY New Paltz. Stefan Macaluso of Sojourner Truth Library at SUNY New Paltz, and he's provided great console on Creative Commons and open access. And Christoph Lalicki of SUNY New Paltz, who is our web designer and developer. This next slide here shows our kind of target audience, although we probably have three primary archetypes in mind. This is, for example, a ceramics professor at a regional state college who is responsible for teaching a lot of technical and artistic skills, but wants to integrate sustainability projects into her courses. So she has a set of goals about figuring out how she might integrate sustainability into her course, and she wants high quality resources to do that, and she wants project-based learning activities and collaboration. For example, she might want to understand how to reach out to a geology professor and what questions to ask about the local clay in her area and what sort of projects students could do with local clay that is harvested from the earth. So she has a set of motivations that are very caring in terms of thinking about her students as not just artists, but as sustainability leaders. And she wants to make a positive impact on uh, the ecology around her, both human and natural, through the decisions she makes as an educator. What she might want out of our system is something that's really easy to use because she's not on the computer all day as a ceramics professor, and search functionality. She also wants tools for customizing and adapting her content for her own needs, and she wants collaboration features. She might also want analytics to track student engagement and learning outcomes. She's already acceptable of sustainability education in all courses, so we're not looking to convert a skeptic over to this topic through this project, but rather to find people who are already curious and caring, but yet frustrated about how to take that next step and integrate sustainability into their learning. I should mention just one more that we have two other primary audiences, administrators and people who might work in facilities management, and then also high school educators. Okay, so here's a dynamic demo. I'm going to go ahead and just click on the wireframes link here and give people a sense for the Learning Hub. So as I mentioned before, or I think I did mention, this is a prototype. This isn't the actual project because we're looking for feedback. So the design is very minimal right now so that we can focus our conversation on the content blocking and get feedback about, is the content in the right place? Do we have the right content? And then we can get that idea right through crafting and polishing a little bit later. We're calling this Learning Hub Green Leaves and Leverage Points, a Sustainability Learning Commons. It has a distinct name from the book because it is a companion project, but not quite the same thing. And the first view has a map. And then if you click on the map tooltip, you can see here's a project about counting birds. And that tooltip would allow you to then dive into that project in more detail from that overview. There's also a button for exploring the collection of sustainability work and browsing the book. So I'll just go ahead and click on Explore the collection. And that brings us to a super search feature. This has a search, but with some help. And so there are a variety of tags here so that you can filter by levels and locations, subject and type. And then down below, we have these cards that appear related to how you filter out your search. So we have some chapter, lesson plan, and article content down below. So if I click on Campus as a Living Lab, for example, this brings us to a chapter that would be in the Palgrave book by Kara Belinsky of SUNY New Paltz. And she has a project about counting birds on the campus and what we can learn about trees on the campus and how we design the natural spaces on our campus. So this has got a set of tags here, and then a link to Springer Link so you can view the chapter there. We might also have a PDF, which will also be available through Springer Link of the chapter for download. A little abstract about the chapter, and then related resources. So for example, you wouldn't be able to include these resources in a print book, but we might have the Merlin Bird app, which is created by Cornell University, and a sample data sheet that other people could use. Down below, we've got a set of projects this is the idea of kind of the remix or also the fork, which I'll talk about in a moment here. And it's called Let's Count Birds, which we saw in the map-based view. And this is a middle school teacher who's now using this based off of Kara's chapter. And it's structured just like you would have in an education plan, an objective, materials, lessons, and activities, related resources, and then student work down below. Now, it's important to note that the student work would be opt-in. The students would have open access contracts, And this would be exemplary work that they'd be proud to share in this space. And browsing the book, we'd have a table of contents. This is the same table of contents as the print book, but we would also have contents that are discipline specific and organized in a different way. So there's going to be multiple ways to access that same information. So overall, our goal is to have an interface that's intuitive and rewarding. And I'll kind of go over some of these other things in a moment, but many thank yous to Christoph, who is working as a lead designer for this. A key concept that we have for this project is the idea of a gardener. The gardener is playing an administrator role. So we don't want to have everything be open on this site because then it will become quite chaotic. The administrator would ensure quality control of the content uploaded to the Learning Hub, and they would vet educators who are opting in to join and use the Learning Hub and set appropriate parameters for that. The gardener would also maintain a thoughtful tagging taxonomy, because that's a topic in and of itself. They would be working with this GitHub analogy that projects can be forked, duplicated, changed, and shared out. We are imagining this administrator being a student intern right now with the Mid-Hudson Teacher Center at SUNY New Paltz. They would be motivated not just by pay, but also by the opportunity to practice open scholarship. So it might be a little bit messy, but like this whole process is its own field, what we might call open scholarship. Our design principles include universal design for learning. That's a really big topic, but I have a link to those principles in the slide deck. The main thing, again, is that there are multiple ways to access the content and multiple ways to express your knowledge, and not just one way to do it. OSQR, which are the online learning standards for SUNY, and that includes a lot of accessibility information, and then open access. So we want to use existing open access web design and development resources and avoid reinventing the wheel. These would be free to use and share. And we also want to learn more about similar projects in the SUNY system, including repositories and databases. Our next steps would, again, be to pilot this with the Mid-Hudson Teacher Center at SUNY New Paltz, which has the New York State Teaching Fellows Program. They have a conference in May, and we're kind of trying to create a very persuasive prototype by that point for that event. And then we also want to test this out through courses taught by our IITG team members and a sustainability course at Rutgers taught by Jack Harris, who has expressed interest in this pilot. Our ideas for improved infrastructure support are related to hopefully having a really good prototype set up where we can then think about more infrastructure. Collaboration potentially with Open Academy at SUNY ESF would be of interest to us because they're already an established and very robust program for online learning. And Paul Hirsch's involvement might be really beneficial there. We also need to imagine the worst case scenario because I'm a designer and I know that a lot of times things go wrong, especially ambitious things. What is the worst case scenario? And we determined that in the worst case scenario, we'd still have an online open access archive that would be available in perpetuity to the public and could contribute to sustainability discussions, even if this project doesn't take off and get a lot of buy-in. And the code would also be open access in that case for some other team to use as well. But we think that this has the potential to work out with the right planning. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Wyman for the conclusion and call to action.
So we see our publication and Learning Hub as a call to action, one that intersects with peace studies and with the inner dimensions of sustainability. This provides great potential for networking with academia and for fostering productive ethical collaboration between institutions of higher learning and the regional communities about us. We have a Google form that Josh mentioned earlier, if you didn't see it in the chat, and we'd appreciate your feedback on our Hub project and any suggestions or shared resources. We'd like to hear about similar projects on your advice on repositories, databases, and design. Thanks very much.
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah. That Google form, of course, we're hoping that maybe after the session's over, you could just spend even 5 minutes taking a look at the wireframes and user journey that we set up. And if you're curious at all and have some expertise in this, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. through the Google form. I'm Joshua Korenblat. This is my email here. We'd also be happy to get any emails from anyone interested in this project. This is Sarah and her email as well. And then thank you again to Christoph for his great work so far in the design of this project. Um, and just one more note here before we take any questions for anyone. Uh, one thing I've learned in sustainability learning is that we're all entangled together. This is a beautiful photo from Andrea Frank at SUNY New Paltz. So please do keep in touch as we develop this project this year. So it's 3:50 right now. We were told we had until 3:55. I was curious if anyone had any thoughts or questions before the end of the session here. Or you could put them into the chat too.
We did have a question
Okay, great.
in the chat from Keith.
Hmm.
Can you put the links into the wireframes? Wait a minute, can you put the links to the wireframes, et cetera, into the Google form to make it easier to refer to when people fill out the form?
That's a great idea and an oversight on my part. So I would definitely include that as soon as this session is over. So thank you. In the meantime, yeah, please do access it through the slide deck.
So we do have another question.
Hmm.
The chat would be great as well. Can we share the link with our campus sustainability communities as well?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, do you know of a good way to do that, like to access all the different campus sustainability communities? Would that be through Lisa?
Probably
Mitten?
so. Are you
Yeah.
asking for the chat for our feedback form or for our draft hub? Because our draft hub is still very much a work in progress, but the form we definitely love to share, and also just we really want to be in communication with other people about projects happening across the SUNY system. If anyone wants to talk about, I know Purchase had a lot happening. Keith's here.
Mhm.
Or which link was it that you wanted? We also have our sustainability community link. Let me put that in the chat, just so you can see where we collect all our frameworks and all our fellows materials. I'll put that in there.
Mhm.
So the response was whatever I can share with our local sustainability committee, that would be great.
Okay, so definitely this.
Mhm.
And then from that site, you can go to the frameworks, which we're especially proud about. I mean, we just use these all the time to help establish this as an emerging academic discipline with a set of learning outcomes, with a set of competencies that Josh shared, and with a set of frameworks that help guide the question from many different dimensions of social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So I'll put that in there too. And we always emphasize with our faculty that they can hinge whatever existing course material that they're working on to the real world and make it relevant in new dimensions to their students. And that's something that students are really demanding, something that we're able to deliver now, but also something that's going to look different. It's site specific. So wherever you are on the globe or wherever you are within the SUNY system, you're going to have particular priorities. At New Paltz, we have a real emphasis on creativity, on the arts, and insisting on interdisciplinary STEM and arts and liberal arts and sciences intersections and business. He's saying that he likes your pyramid. shape for the SDGs. Yeah, we often talk about how interrelated and overlapping these SDGs are, and we look for other ways to discuss what they mean to us and to our students. So yeah, thanks, Josh.
Yeah, well, I can't take credit for that. That was from a conference. It was actually related to in Bali, I believe, Indonesia. So, which is a place that's famous for being very peaceful, and what principles can be applied from there to the UN global goals. So I thought it was a really interesting way to frame it, and to really realize that it's about people and each other, and not just a kind of environmental studies topic is really important for this project.
I think that's an important dimension of what happened with us when we had all these voices come in, and then we had more and more global voices, and a bunch of philosophies started to emerge. We started with teaching templates that were very practical, like here's what you can do in class, and here's what we did, here's some example assignments. And it turned into, what are we trying to sustain? And what does peace have to do with this? And what does love have to do with this? And so we discovered that there were so many different approaches. And we really insist that that does not make it shallow, that makes it super deep.
Mhm. Right, and that's the benefit of having the online community as well. So we're really hoping, again, because it's an open scholarship, that we're all going to kind of learn and develop and evolve through this rather than be experts in this right away. So, um, yeah, so thank you all for attending. I see that it's at 3:55. So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and I'll go ahead and update that Google form, and hope that in the meantime people can use the link from the slide deck and that we get a little bit of feedback. However much you can provide, you don't have to fill out the whole form. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.